All right, hello, welcome everybody. If you are watching the recording, you just missed Stacy walking around KubeCon Valencia, seeing all of our friends and partners there. Excited to have more and more events happening. This is the May FinOps Summit. We are here to help all of you, the people who advance the value of cloud, whether you're a practitioner or a vendor or a consultant or any of those areas. This summit, we're going to be talking about a couple topics, chargeback as a big theme, and then the roles and jobs of FinOps and how people move through those. As usual, packed agenda. We always end up with too much stuff. This is a reminder for myself and all the speakers to keep on their time. We will be, giving you the virtual hook, but we've got a lot of great folks who are going to be sharing their stories on this call. So we focus in three areas: create connections for you, inspire growth through training, education, professional development, and then help with building mastery of your practice with frameworks and working groups. You're going to hear lots of different ways to get plugged in, and we wanted to thank the sponsor for this month's summit, which is Spot by NetApp. We're going to be hearing from Jon Bock there in a little bit, who was with Spot before the NetApp acquisition, I believe, and is now also working in the cloud checker sphere. So thank you, Jon, and all the other partners who make this community possible. We now have almost 20 premier partners. Thank you to Cloud Health, Google Cloud, SADA, Deloitte, Accenture, Verticent, Apptio Cloudability, McKinsey & Company, NordCloud, SoftwareOne, Tencent, Spot, IBM, HCL, and three new ones that we're going to hear from in the coming months: Flexera, QCost, and Ternary. So exciting to get kind of the whole spread now of all the major and longer tail platforms plugged in, as well as I think we've got over 40 other vendor, consultant, services partners who support this community. So please check all them out. There are vendor profiles for them on FinOps.org. The governing board, which is who I and the staff work for, is the group that helps drive strategy. We're happy to welcome now Webb Brown from QCost, Drew Coley from HCL, Sasha Kipravar from Ternary, and Brian Adler from Flexera to that. So you'll be hearing more from them in the future. Thanks always to the Technical Advisory Council. This is the small but mighty team of 11 that vets all the best practices and standards that the working groups put out. We're going to be hearing from the working groups a bit later about what's happening in FinOps land. And my shout out, the thing I need most in the world right now, we're building an awesome team of people who support this community here at the FinOps Foundation. We're part of the Linux Foundation. We have two new full-time heads that we are opening. Headcount, I don't want to say heads, it sounds impersonal, but we're hiring someone to be a program manager running all the working groups, making sure those happen, helping get those outputs going. We're also hiring a member success person who is going to help our practitioner partners, our enterprise partners, our vendor partners engage and get the most out of the foundation. So if you know anybody who might be interesting for either of those roles, please let us know. We are actively trying to fill those. With that, let's talk a little bit about the community that is the FinOps Foundation. I'm going to pass to Joe Daly here, our head of community, to tell us about the Ambassador program that we've been getting teed up for a few months now.
Absolutely. So earlier this year, we announced the Ambassador program. This is for our practitioners who have continued to contribute and engage at a high level with our community. So we have 15 approved ambassadors at the moment, and we wanted to take a moment this morning to introduce some of them. Vik, Josh, and Michelle will be presenting later on, but here are some 8 more. And we'll start it off with Eric. Eric Malarchuk, please say hello.
Hey, everybody. So I guess I have 17 seconds now. I'm not.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
Anyways, my name is Eric Malarchuk. I work for Boomi. I'm the FinOps lead at Boomi. I'm also known as the Boomi Grinch. And if you're curious to know why, please reach out to me. I'm located near Philadelphia, and some might consider my superpower being the welcome wagon. I'm usually the one that's on top of welcoming new people to the community in the intros Slack channel and connecting them to topics that they are looking to learn a little bit more about. I'm always up for a conversation on unit economics, waste, and efficiency, and I'll be speaking at FinOpsX on that topic.
And you do give the best welcomes in that Slack channel, I got to say. Yeah, I've kind of given up after seeing yours.
All right. Next up, Michelle Cleland. Are you online?
Present. Hello, everyone. Hi.
Go right ahead.
All right, so my name is Michelle Cleland, and I'm actually based in Hong Kong, and I'm currently working to a nonprofit organization, the Hong Kong Jockey Club. But previously, I was working with China Light Power, which is the utility provider in Hong Kong. Mostly people think I'm like Professor McGonagall, mainly from a leadership and the ability to adapt or change. So they say like I'm a change shifter. So in terms of cloud, it's really good from that perspective because I get to influence and become really an ambassador, an evangelist in the organization, or even now in this region in terms of FinOps and the whole cloud cost management. From a challenge perspective, I think it's from my experience, it's really on how do we articulate the benefit of cloud beyond the dollar side, beyond the cost savings, and also from a cultural change where from being a CapEx heavy investment, now everything is shifting to OpEx. How do we support the organization in that
Michelle,
respect?
I'm gonna leave them wanting to talk to you more because we're gonna get to everybody else, but reach out to Michelle if you have questions. We're gonna start the next one. No, totally.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Daniel, you're next.
Hello, greetings from Portugal. My name is Daniel Silva and I work in Nós Telecom based in Lisbon. It's a sunny day all the time. My role is a senior cloud solutions architect, and I'm a tech guy who loves to create solutions in the cloud. I try to bring more people to the cloud world internally and customers, and we create a team of FinOps in here. I started the journey in the FinOps Foundation, taking the Practitioner certifications, and now I'm finished the professional. And I have the pleasure to be a FinOps Ambassador to help others in Slack or in other communications. And thank you. No more than 30 seconds here.
Fantastic. Parker,
we need like a buzzer this time. Last time we did this, we had a buzzer, but we're doing the nicer version now.
That's right.
Hey, I'm Parker Nancollis. I'm in the United States. I'm in Utah, and I'm a cloud business analyst for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And one of the things I've been diving into really deeply lately is commitment-based discounts. I'm working on revising our strategy at our organization for that. And then I also helped with the FinOps Pro Course module on that. And so I've just been diving really deep into different strategies and best practices. And I'd be interested to hear from any of you guys if you've got an interesting strategy or want to talk. Commitment-based discounts.
Thank you, Parker, for all the help on the pro modules. Some of the ones you've done are really fantastic. So appreciate your inputs there.
Absolutely. Kim Weir from Target.
Hey, everybody. I'm Kim Weir. As Joe said, I'm from Target. My superpower is that I, like Michelle, I'm a shapeshifter. So I can take any team and make it great. From a FinOps perspective, I am an expert at being new and building your own education or your own platform, your own application. So reach out to me if you want input on that.
And I think you have one of the larger FinOps teams that we've come across. So I imagine you'd also be a good person to talk to about team structures and who to put in what sorts of seats. And impressive to see what you pulled off.
All right. Scott Lynn. Are you with us, Scott? Oh, I will introduce Scott. Scott he's been with us for a long time. He leads up the San Francisco Cloud FinOps Meetup group. He is incredibly helpful, incredibly supportive of the community. Always feel free to reach out to Scott if you have questions in Azure or in just community building and wanting to talk to. He's got some really great experiences and ideas.
Scott also holds one of the voting practitioner seats on the FinOps governing board. So if you want the FinOps Foundation to go a different direction, he's a good person's ear to bend as well.
That's right. Dan Berg.
Hey everybody, I'm Dan. If you were here at the little before chat, before this little conference, I host the New York City meetup, and we would love to have you guys join there. I am a cloud ops analyst at Datadog. I joined there. I was the first dedicated cloud cost hire. We've since grown out a team, so I love kind of talking about the different roles that people can take. Also, Datadog cloud native from day one. So like if you're in that spot, rather than migrating to a cloud, completely different, we're not completely different, but different challenges. And I'd love to chat with you about that.
Fantastic. And then wrapping us up today, Noel Crowley.
Hi, Joe. My name is Noel Crowley. I work as a Director of Cloud FinOps for Fidelity Investments, and I'm a FinOps Ambassador from Ireland. I also have the pleasure of being one of the hosts of the exciting FinOps pod with Joe Daly and Dina Solis. And I'd like to quote JR today when he said it's oddly good. So I'd like to say to everybody to go listen to the FinOps Foundation podcast wherever you get your podcasts. But mostly if you could get them from Spotify, because Joe Daly is really interested in knowing what music FinOps practitioners are listening to.
It's a lot of Ed Sheeran. I'm not gonna lie.
I didn't mean that oddly good thing as a backhanded compliment. I just didn't know it would get so good so fast. I thought it would take you all some time.
That's odd.
But to go to my superpower, what I'm interested in mostly is how we measure FinOps success. Are people using KPIs? Are they using cost ratings? Or what kind of reports they're using on this? To the extent that myself and Zach Stidham will be hosting a session at FinOpsX on this very topic of the history of KPIs within Fidelity for FinOps. So if you see me in Austin,
I'm gonna have to cut you off too, man. Sorry. I love you, but we're gonna leave one more. We got a lot of content. Do we have anybody else?
No, that's it. We have to cut it off.
Awesome. Joe, you want to share about the meetups?
Absolutely. And I shared a link in the meetups in the chat earlier. We have a lot of great meetups. Dan Berg hosts the New York City meetup. We have the Stockholm, Sweden meetup, May 24th. I'll actually be speaking via video link. Don't know how it's going to work, but we're going to figure that out. Then also we have some other ones popping up here. Sydney's starting up this summer. New York City is listed on here quite a lot. The Dutch FinOps groups, Go Dutch, they'll be hosting an in-person meetup later this summer. And of course, San Francisco. Go check out our link. I'll post it again in the chat here to always stay up to date on where your closest meetup is.
And thank you again so much to all the ambassadors for stepping up. These people are not paid to do this work. They're just helping the community and sharing knowledge and connections. So thank you all for being a part of that program and volunteering your time. You've heard a lot about FinOpsX. I'm not going to dwell on this. The thing I'm going to hit though, it is a 2-day conference, and it wasn't originally a 2-day conference. And the second day is the best day. It is what FinOps Foundation secret sauce, networking, people whiteboarding their forecasting models, talking, chalk talks, lightning talks. If you're coming, definitely be there for the second day. Come Sunday, leave Wednesday. Book it soon because we are about 2/3 full. We expect to sell out in about 10 days, and we have a limited number of seats, which is 400 total. So please, if you're considering coming, and we will, of course, as I mentioned if you can't afford to come or your company won't pay for it, we do have a travel scholarship that a bunch of companies have paid into. So please let us know, and we possibly can help with travel and expenses as well. Content is on the site, x.finops.org. Big shout out to Ashley Ramotko, who has confirmed and spoken now to over 45 speakers. We have all these folks teed up and lined up, and she's been doing a great job getting an amazing mix of content. And with that, we'd love to welcome our friend Jon Bock, who is VP at NetApp, working with both Spot and Cloud Checker. Is that right, John? You're across both?
Yes,
Perfect.
We're bringing those two together because there's a lot of commonality across those. So yes.
They are also an oddly good fit together, I hear. So yeah, we'd love to, John recently joined Spot. They were one of the large incumbent platforms in the space who are now contributing. And we wanted to have John spend about 8 minutes telling us about their view on the FinOps world and what they do and get to know him a little bit better. So John, over to you.
Thank you so much. Definitely appreciate it. And definitely great to meet everyone, to see everyone. So what I thought might be the interesting thing to kind of talk about is just a little bit of a perspective on how do you operationalize FinOps. Certainly there's a huge amount of work that's gone into figuring out best practices, processes, and such around FinOps and frameworks. But as I think we all know, where the rubber meets the road is when you actually try to implement this and make it be something that all the different teams are kind of on the same page about. And so I'm sure those of you on the call have dealt with all of the different complexities and aspects of that. And so that was really where I wanted to kind of start off with. And I think the thing about FinOps that I'm sure we're all aware is that with great responsibility comes very few resources. And so I think that's part of the challenge is how do FinOps teams work with all of the other teams that are required for them to be successful. And so that was kind of where I started. And you can go ahead to the next slide, JR. When we think about how do we work together with all of the other teams that are responsible for helping us be successful as we try to create a FinOps culture and discipline within an organization, and a little bit tongue in cheek, but I tried to brainstorm a little bit on what are the different things that people might say if you went to the CloudOps teams about what is FinOps. So, one scenario would be, people say, oh, FinOps, that's a FinOps team. I let them deal with it. I don't want to deal with that, right? Another is, yeah, FinOps is just another set of rules I have to follow. I've got this set of things I have to do. It's just yet another thing I have to pay attention to. It's almost like compliance sort of in the process. Other people would say well, it's yet another list of tickets in my long and growing queue of, things that I need to do. And then, there are probably, and hopefully, increasingly, more people who are saying, yeah, FinOps is a shared responsibility that is across, many different functions within the organization, and that is also integrated into what we do. And so I think, JR, were we going to do this as a little bit of a poll?
So we did have a poll. I set it up ahead, and I'm hitting the poll button, and we found that when Zoom gets close to 1,000 people, it sometimes falls over. So the poll button is not responding. So we were going to ask which of these you most resonated with, but you'll have to share your thoughts in Slack. Sorry about that, John.
Okay, no worries. Yeah, I'm sure this is not exhaustive, but I think the point here is that FinOps can be seen by a lot of the people in the organization as yet another thing that they have to do, as opposed to something that is just an integrated part of what they do day to day. And that's really part of our responsibility, is to figure out how do we make this be something that really is operationalized, so to speak. It's built into what they do. So if you want to kind of go to the next slide. And so really, when I say operationalization, what I really mean is, FinOps is not a one-off project. It's not a reactive, gosh, the finance team is really worried about our ability to predict and manage to budget. FinOps really needs to be that discipline that's embedded in what a bunch of different people across a bunch of different teams do. It's definitely not the person who is in the FinOps group coming and looking over someone's shoulder saying hey, here's what I need to do today. It's how do we actually make this be something that is embedded in the day-to-day processes across DevOps teams, across SRE teams, across cloud engineering teams, even to the level of cloud architects, as well as people who are responsible for budget and for that aspects of the business. And so if you can move to the next slide there, JR. So thinking about what operationalization means, at the high level, I think we probably all would agree that there's a number of different components. I tried to identify just a few that we typically have come up in conversations. Certainly, one part of it is a culture. Especially when you talk to developers typically are always focused on how do I get enough resources for my application to make sure that I will never be short of resources. But there's definitely a culture mentality, which is how do I most efficiently accomplish a job that we're looking to enable people to embed as part of their process. Then it goes without saying that visibility and transparency is an important part of that. It's certainly hard for people to align to a process if they're not sure, if they know how it's being measured, or if there's not agreement on the ways we're going to measure what application teams cost burdens are, so to speak, or what the way is that we're going to allocate different costs and we're going to track those costs. Another key part of this is just making it be part of day-to-day processes. When resources are provisioned, when resources are scaled, when we're trying to figure out how we're going to deploy more applications, how do we make the processes that support that be processes that really are conscious of the FinOps needs and the principles and the cost aspects of that. And then finally, how do we do this in a consistent and governed way, not to prevent being able to customize this based on the needs of different groups, different applications, different business requirements. But how do we do it in a way that doesn't mean that it's, every single team thinks about this differently, implements it differently. And, as a result, there's not consistency across the organization such that it's hard to get the integrated view of, what are our ROI on these projects and what are the different costs of those projects and how do we allocate those. You can go ahead to the next slide, JR. So at the highest level, there's a set of pieces that we've seen in conversations with organizations that really kind of are critical to making this possible. And certainly there's lots of details behind this, but following that framework for FinOps, the inform, optimize, operate framework, definitely there are pieces here that are process, there are pieces that are culture, and there are pieces that are tools. And so that's often the conversation we have is how do we actually think about bringing together those, the culture, the processes, and the tools to support this. And so one part of that is, being able to make sure that people have access and visibility to not just raw data, but also to, the analyzed data that allows us to get on the same page about where resources are being used and the cost of those resources and the ROI of the use of those resources. And so there definitely are pieces there where tools are really a really important part, and making sure that it's not that, one person over here, they rely on that spreadsheet that they downloaded from their cloud account. Whereas this other person over here relies on this tool that they went and bought for their group, and like the third person relies on some cloud management platform. It's definitely trying to figure out like how do we get people on the same page, and making that transparent so that everyone from a DevOps engineer to someone who's on the finance side of things can actually know where they can go to see things in a consistent way. One thing about optimization that I think is a really important conversation we typically have is that it's very easy for organizations to end up doing optimization as a reactive project based on some realization that budget and costs are not in alignment. And I think the mentality that we often end up having conversations about is how do we just make this continuous? Because I definitely have talked to people who did a big optimization project, and so great, the day after that optimization project, they felt like they were fairly efficient and they were actually driving good return on that investment. But that drifts every single day after that. So come 6 months later, they might be back in like a very similar boat because there were new projects, there were new demands, and so like we really spend a lot of time working with organizations on how do we actually make this a continuous process where it's something that you don't have to come back and do a reactive project in 6 months because you built that into a discipline. And part of that is also just how do you integrate that into the processes? Make it easy to figure out like how do we actually want to think about approvals for use of resources? How do we want to think about policies that can simplify and streamline the way that we actually deploy resources, and do so in a way that doesn't slow down the execution that these teams need to have? And then also just the day-to-day operations. Automation is a key part of this. It certainly is the case that we talk to a lot of organizations who are very early in their FinOps journey.
Hold on.
Sorry, John, I'll mute everybody else. Go ahead.
There is. For whom manual processes are often the rule, and so like there's a lot of work that definitely automation can help to take off the plate of what are typically already overburdened teams. Doing that in ways that apply across a lot of the different processes, as we mentioned, provisioning. As we mentioned, how do we figure out utilization? How do we figure out like resource requests? All of those, and doing it in a way that uses automation to do it just in time. I certainly like I think we've all seen the different research and statistics talking about how underutilized resources or wasted resources are a huge cost that organizations are being forced to bear. And so being able to do just-in-time allocation of resources to meet SLAs is a key part of that. So go ahead, JR, next one. So, certainly like at Spot, this is something that we think about a lot from the tool side. We do have a portfolio of technologies. Some of them are, really at the automation level, others are at the visibility level, others are at the governance level, but they really come together to support a lot of these different aspects. So, visibility, like definitely there's a lot of work we've done working closely, with different organizations that many of you are in to figure out like how to make sure that visibility is useful. I think, yet another dashboard is definitely like not a solution. And so we definitely have to spend a lot of time trying to figure out like how do we make sure that we're giving people visibility in a way that's meaningful to them. Application teams need visibility in a way that aligns to their applications and the resources used to support them. Finance teams need a different type of visibility, and DevOps teams often need to get another type of visibility. How do we provide tools to help give them like that visibility in a unified place so that you have a single source of truth? That's one aspect of what we focused on from the tool side. Definitely the optimization is a core technology that we developed at Spot. Being able to use purchasing strategies. I heard someone earlier talk about like how to manage, your overall commitment purchasing strategy. That's definitely a lot of the work that we've done is to create technology that can really support that in an automated way. And doing that, in a way that can also, figure out like how do we actually do more than just like, purchasing compute, purchasing storage and such, but also intelligently, link together the different pieces of applications to use resources efficiently. Governance is obviously a key part of that. How do we make sure that this isn't just random engineers trying to do their best, but not in a framework that is visible, transparent, reportable. That's a key part of the technology that we provide, and that's really key to making this consistent across groups and different parts of the organization. And then, of course, the automation. Like that's one of the core technologies that we spent a lot of time developing is automation that can take a set of rules and use analytics and intelligence to continually apply those so that even as applications evolve and use of those applications evolve, there's still a consistent set of things that people are doing in order to be able to like automate that optimization of those. So that's just a really quick overview.
Just coming up on time. I think was that your last slide as well?
Yep.
Perfect.
That is our last slide. Yeah.
Can I ask you
so
what maybe?
Yeah.
Let's go ahead.
Sure.
Maybe an off-the-cuff question.
As well. Yeah. Go ahead.
It'll be a FinOpsX. Everybody, I think, always looks at all the tooling platforms and they try and figure out like which one does which thing best. Like if you were standing at a booth and somebody said like, what's your specialty sweet spot? Which area would that be?
Yeah, so I think there's really two parts that we, really focus on doing in kind of a unique way. And so we focus on basically how do you combine visibility and insight with automation and optimization that is automated. So we actually have like a large set of experience building predictive algorithms and implementing automation that's based on collecting billions of data points from across all the cloud and usage at customers, and using that to really inform how do we automate optimization, but then connecting that to visibility so that you have those two married, in a single suite.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the introduction. And yeah, I think Jon is on our Slack as well as some of his team, and they're going to be at FinOpsX. And yeah, hope to plug you into more of the working groups in different areas. And thanks a lot, Jon. Excited to have you as part of the community.
Thank you, Jaya.
All right, so we're going to get into the practitioner talks now. We've got 3 of these. Vik is going to dig in around their FinOps ecosystem and Chargeback, and then we're going to hear from a few other folks after that. Vik, are you able to unmute yourself? Probably not, because I just changed the muting settings because we were having issues. Let me unmute you.
Are you able to? Yes, are you able
Perfect.
to hear me?
Yes.
All right.
Hi, Vik. Welcome. Yeah, over to you. Excited to hear your story.
Sure. First, thank you for the opportunity to you, Ashley, Joe, Steve, Rob, to present here at the summit. I'm a FinOps Manager at Cigna. I've been in this particular role, part-time, mostly in last 3 years. And our journey, like everybody else, when we started at FinOps, initially, we were in the crawl phase, trying to understand where all our accounts is, where all our spend is. And then moving from there, we went through our walk and run phase. And currently I would say we are in run phase 3 years into this journey. And let me talk about what we do here. So currently, like everyone knows on here, like FinOps is a fairly new concept. Pretty excited with JR and team, how they have expanded this. People did not know about that. Like we were doing it in our silos. We did not know actually the term and then what all collaboration is, FinOps is. And again, it's a journey, right? Your goal of FinOps is for the teams to understand your cloud finances and get excellence with the operations of those finances. So for this talk, I'm going to be focusing on the inform piece with Chargeback and Showback and some budgeting and forecasting. Next slide, please. So as the first FinOps principle, right, there's an operating model that's been defined by FinOps Foundation, right? And that is primarily it's cross-functional. Not everybody can be in the same team. And for collaboration, we ensure that we partner with different areas and businesses to help us achieve the optimization and the excellence we're trying to achieve with cloud finances. Next slide, please. So the key thing that we look into is why do we need cost allocation, right? That's one thing, is that what happens with how do we manage the finances, right? I'm part of the Center of Cloud Enablement at Cigna, and everything here in our COE, we get all the costs that come from cloud, right? We are responsible for paying the cloud providers. We are responsible for doing our capacity planning, right? Reserve savings plan, etc. We get all those like network connectivity that to the cloud, any software that we install for governance, etc. So all that cost comes to us. And what do we do with that cost, right? It's not something that we are going to eat that cost with the operating model that we have. We have to ensure that costs are allocated out. At the same time, the goal is that we allocate all the costs that's coming from CSP, which are direct costs, and anything that is, which we cannot like see, we cannot do granular tagging for it, right? Those all have to be allocated out. So the goal, end of the day, is you have to ensure that your net costs are zero in your expense center, and that's what requires your Showback and financial cost recovery becomes very important for cost allocation. Next slide. How do we do this? So we saw the FinOps operating model, right? We saw that it's a collaboration. So what we are doing is we are collaborating with different teams on our side, and we basically, it's building partnerships. If you build partnerships, you make sure that folks who are responsible for the costs are accountable for the costs, right? And they do the right thing for cost transparency, cost optimization, allocation, chargeback, etc. And what this particular slide shows you, it sums up as far as what the COE FinOps ecosystem is here. The tools and technology we are using, even though we are using some tools and technologies that are not CSP specific. You still rely on CSP specific tools for some native capabilities, right? So that's the key. We have to partner with the CSPs. With the finance, we are partnering, of course, for our chargebacks, right? Once we look at the cost, where does the cost go? So that's the egress piece that we have to partner with the finance. And in addition to that, we also partner with them regarding what our timing strategies, what visibility or showback or transparency they're looking for. That's another key thing. And the right side of the equation is doing all this stuff you can do in crawl and walk, right? But then you need automation. A team of like a few people cannot do this, right? So you need definitely to automate. So that's where your run phase comes in. And then we have included automation, and I'm speaking at FinOpsX on June 2021, and we can talk more about how we are going our run phase with cost allocation. Next slide, please.
Yeah, this is such a great slide. Are these slides you're able to share? I'm sure people are going to ask.
To some extent, yeah.
Okay. So maybe not published, but we'll come back to it.
Yeah.
Great. 1 second. Let me try and advance here. Sorry, it looks like we had somebody annotating. I just turned off annotation, and I'll try and get that mark off. There you go.
So where do we end up? So after doing all that, right? Who, what, why? We still face challenges, right? And the key things are, again, I'm going to focus on the forecasting and allocation of costs, right? Allocation of costs are important for budgeting and forecasting. Unless you provide the full charges to the organization delivery teams who are using your cloud, how do we ensure that they're doing the correct forecasting or they're doing accurate forecasting? So they go hand in hand. Industry-wide, you can see the industry state of FinOps, right? There are still companies that are looking at that, they're looking to see those challenges, right? We still see 23% on allocation and 26% on forecasting. So I'll talk about in the next slide as far as what some steps of where we are, how do we got from crawl to run, and then we can talk details. You can hear my talk at FinOpsX. Next slide, please. All right. So the key things here, what are the cost types? So we have bucketed those things into two sets of costs. One is the direct cost that you see. You can see in any of the tools we have got, like we've got active cloudability, right? You can see all the CSP costs. They've integrated very well. It's multiple CSPs, right? So you can see all your services in that tool. But then the challenge comes in is that what about the shared costs? What about that 20%? What happens to our network costs? Like, yes, the VPCs are in the accounts, right? Individual accounts, but what happens to Transit Gateway? That's the funnel or the router, you call it in the legacy world, right? That connects you from your on-prem to your cloud. What about those costs? What about any compliance tools that you're running on your accounts, right? What about if you're not using KS, you're using Kafka's, et cetera, or something else, OpenShift as an example, right? What about those costs? How do you distribute those costs out? And lastly, of course, is enterprise support. If you've got enterprise support from AWS or at Azure, you see that those costs are not associated with individual accounts. It comes to your like organization account or your parent account, right? So the goal here is that how do we get to that 100% cost allocation and chargebacks? Next slide, please. So this is the slide that's a preamble to our FinOpsX 2021, right? Is how do we get from the initial walk, crawl to run phase, right? So the first thing is to understand what all your accounts are, right? You need to understand what your bill is. Where we started from, we had people in the company using credit cards, opening individual accounts, right? So the key was to get everything onto a single organization. That's one key thing. So to get all the billing, right? So then the second thing was like, where do we get the billing? Do we still have the billing go in the individual expense centers? That did not scale, right? Because people did not everybody was knowledgeable with finances. And as you know, engineers are the one who are opening the accounts, they're managing the accounts, and they are like oxymorons, right? So from the finance versus development pieces. So we ensured that to get the visibility, we got the billing centralized. And then that gives us synergies that enabled us to see what our total cost spend was, and we were able to enroll in our enterprise discount program at AWS. Long commitment, but still it's a good way to go instead of leaving money on the table. Then coming back to our run phase, so the first thing was that then we started working with different teams, understand especially with the providers, right, how the cost consultation, understand what else can we do from optimization perspective. Then we went into the capacity. After we got that, we looked at different tools. We initially started with Splunk with basic dashboarding to get some transparency, but then we went to other tools which gave us more transparency. And the key thing was, especially the consumers they were looking for, is I only care about my area. I don't care about other applications. I don't care about what you're doing in somebody else's cloud. I care only what I need to look at, what my budget is, what my forecast needs to be, what my charges are, right? So the tool that we shortlisted was our Acture tool, where we looked into, they gave us all the functionality, right? And we were able to give them the visibility. We were able to give them the visibility for forecasting, budgeting within the tool itself. But then, hold on. That's all direct cost, right? What happened to the shared cost? So we stumbled upon that piece in this area, and then we started collecting all the information for our direct costs, for the shared cost, or what additional cost that's coming in that the teams are not seeing, and we are eating it in our expense centers. And that's where the shared cost allocation and Chargeback comes in.
Hey, Vic,
So,
this is fantastic
sure.
slide and content. I don't know if people are seeing in the message. We need to move into the next area, but is there like a final message you want to leave, or the takeaway you want people to have?
Sure. So key thing is that make sure that you have got visibility into your costs. Make sure you understand what your cost variants are, right? And look for where we can reduce that variability in that cost and look into the cost allocation.
So true. And, if you're willing at your talk at X, and I would throw this out to all the other speakers as well, if you could share, maybe the failures as well, what went bad, what you wish you could redo and go back over. And people, I think, always love to hear those. So this is fantastic. Looking forward to seeing the longer version of it. And thank you for putting that together.
Sure. Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you, Vic. And so that's Vic, you're in the Slack as well, right?
I am, JR.
Okay. And so if you want to get a hold of Vic, that's probably the best place to do it. Sorry if we flooded your Slack inbox. So we've got a couple new vendor members who've joined us. We're going to do a quick 30-second intro for each of them. And we're going to start with Joel Proctor, if he is online. Can you hear us, Joel? Or can we hear you, I guess?
Test.
Perfect. Yep. Go for it, Joe. Welcome.
Hi, everybody. Happy to be here. I'm Joel Proctor, as JR mentioned, co-founder of BlueArc. We build and support open source FinOps solutions to automatically enforce best practices. And that is it.
That was the shortest intro ever. I commend you. Well done. Great to hear that, Joel. I love the clear pitch. Welcome. And so next is Keith Knowles from Advisor. Keith, can you unmute?
I am.
Perfect.
Good morning.
Morning.
Hi, Keith Knowles with Advisor. We're a relatively new player in the FinOps world. We're a SaaS solution, basically born out of a need within our parent company, which is a business intelligence consulting firm that ended up with a surprise cloud bill that more or less doubled our expenses for the month. And we looked at a way to solve that and ended up building something based a little bit unique, based on operational data instead of billing data. Really excited to be part of the community here and looking forward to seeing many of you at FinOpsX in Austin.
Perfect. Thanks, Keith. Welcome.
Thank you.
Kevin Taylor from Xstratus.
Thanks, JR.
Hey, thank you. Whoops. There you go.
So as mentioned, I'm Kevin Taylor. I'm head of cloud services here at Xstratus. We've been helping customers with cloud cost optimization for 7 years. We've actually saved millions for our customers in cloud spend. Today, though, we're focused on delivering comprehensive FinOps as a service, where we combine our expert people, proven process, focused technology to execute all aspects of a successful FinOps program. And for all of you, if you come across anybody in your network who is considering adopting FinOps and looking to accelerate, keep us in mind.
Thanks, Kevin. Aditya from Cloudwiry.
Thanks, JR. Hello, fellow practitioners. I started Cloudwiry based on my experience as a practitioner, where tools were really good at telling me what my problems are, not so good at solving them. So here at Cloudwiry, it's basically FinOps in a box, where we combine our multi-cloud FinOps platform with managed service to simplify, automate FinOps best practices for rate optimization, cost allocation, and resource optimization and configuring them for our customers' engineering and finance needs. Been doing this for a few years. Looking forward to seeing you all in FinOpsX here in Austin. So thank you, JR.
I did come to your booth, and you probably have some of the coolest swag. I'm not going to lie. It's an optimization bear, which I love.
We have a few secret swag, so anybody
there we go.
in having a chat. So
thank you so much. I'm happy to have all you in the community, and yeah, please reach out to all those folks if you have questions and want to engage. So next, we're going to hear from Josh Bauman, who's been a longtime member at Electronic Arts, and hear his story. Josh, are you there?
Hey, how's it going, JR?
Hey, good. Over to you.
I'm Josh Bauman, Director of Strategy and Planning at Electronic Arts. So thanks, everybody. I will be presenting at FinOpsX, a longer session of kind of what we're doing today, giving you more of the story there. And I'm the ambassador for Austin as well. So didn't get my 30-second shout out earlier because I've got the longer one here, like Joe mentioned. So we're going to piggyback off of Vik's presentation a little bit, which was excellent. So shout out to Vik there. Looking forward to collaborating with you a little bit there. And my slide, I didn't know that I had animation in the slide here, JR.
There we go. I'm happy to click as many times as you want.
Okay, no, that's perfect right now. Okay. I'm not sure where that happened with animation, so apologies for that.
No worries.
Where I'm coming from, this kind of piggybacks off the conversations with Vik, and even Scott had a question in the chat just a minute ago about doing chargeback, specifically on reserved instances, savings plans, EC2, and we ran into a problem years ago at EA with how we manage this. And to give you a little bit of where we are coming from, whenever we buy an RI, I buy all the RIs centrally, I buy all the savings plans centrally. We'd have, and then what would happen at the end of the month, we'd end up with about 50 different rates for the single product, right? An M5 large, depending on if you got it all up front, no up front, partial up front, 1 year, 3 year, on demand. It could be a host of different rates, and depending on how many of each of those you used in the 720 hours in the month, changed your fee around, right? And so a couple of years ago, we looked at when savings plans came out and said, how do we make this simpler? How do we, make this easier? So what we went through a process, and you'll see this on the next slide here, what we went through is a process of iteration and said, okay, how do we come up with a way for our end users to consume from a chargeback perspective that makes it easier for them, yet gives us the ability to manage our RIs and savings plan central. So that's the first thing we did, was set the stage, right? We went through and said, okay, we got a whole bunch of products that we want to buy from, in this case, AWS, but we do the same thing with GCP and Azure as well too. But we want to buy, these great commitments up front that allow us to save money, right? However, if I apply the bill natively, it's going to give me random rates all over the place, and I can't give a really good chargeback. And that makes it really hard for me to forecast going forward on an individual basis. So we laid out some ground rules. First was derivation must be clear. And second, the rate must be stable. Right? How do we ensure that we have not this random rate throughout the entire month based on whatever product gets applied during that particular hour? So how do we do that? So the way we got to this is we said, okay, we're going to have a single rate for EC2. Regardless of what your discount is, whether you have a PPA, an EDP, whatever those words are that gets applied, or a RI or a savings plan, we're going to give you a consistent rate. The second thing is we're going to go through and look at that on a cadence basis and say, hey, is our rate good or not? So we're going to update it on a cadence basis. And finally, we're not going to hit the nail on the head, right? Because if you've got a cost and you want to either, if it's a variable cost and you're passing it through, it's going to be variable to the end users. If you set up a stable rate, then you're going to have to hold that variance somewhere else, whether it's a plus up or down. So I decided I'm going to hold that variance in my department, whether it's a profit or a loss, but I'm going to hold on to that variance and I'm going to control that margin, and I'm not going to have everybody else worry about pass through of variable rates for the hundreds of accounts that I have. So what did this end up looking like? So JR, next slide. Sorry, that's the next slide. So kind of went ahead a little bit of myself here, but what we did then is we got our savings plans and our reserved instances in there and talked to our finance teams and our business partners and said, okay, the way that the rates are applied today, they impact our chargeback methodology today. It's inconsistent. The rates come across. It doesn't allow us to scenario plan well because we're not sure what the rate will be at any one moment. Our end users are then coming in. So back to the slide from Vik about inspiring engineers to have action. Well, this would inspire our engineers to have negative behavior of wanting to put their RIs at 100% in their account to get the lowest possible rate so they could spend more. And yet, if they went to a new instance size or changed their plans, then it was left me holding the bag as the centralized group, not being able to understand where I'm going to apply those RIs to a different place. And again, final point there was accuracy at a project level. I was then not able to have the same rate across every single project throughout the entire company while maintaining a semblance. So then JR, now next slide, apologies. This is the solution that we came up with. So our previous solution was if an RI is in the native account, it gets the RR rate. If not, then it goes through some other process. What we've done the last 18 months is we now have our EC2 at a consistent % off of on-demand cost. That's the trade secret internal EA number that we have there. And everybody gets that exact same rate for every EC2 usage that they have. I then manage the RI, the savings plan, the 1 year, the 3 year, the all upfront, the no upfront, the partial upfront, all behind the curtains, behind the scenes. And so every engineer just says, okay, hey, I'm going to go use that M, I'm going to go use that R, I'm going to go use a Mac instance. What's the rate? Oh, it's just X% off of on demand. So go look at the AWS calculator, put in the rate there, and then apply that trade secret, and then all of a sudden you've got your rate. I've maintained this for over the last year. It's been about 15 months that we've had this in cycle. Right now, we've been able to maintain that same exact rate. We've gone through and looked at updating it on an annual basis, but our finance team has decided that we're going to keep it going for another year. So we'll probably have the rate stable for 2 years right now at this point. And that margin has just been maintained in my side. Inside EA, I've got a little bit of a profit going on, which is nice from that perspective, but it allows me to maintain conservative nature. You may ask what happens if I have a large margin outside one way or another, if I have a large amount of usage. I then apply as penalty to that one team for that particular month if they have a large spike in usage. So I even have an out if something goes astray with my rate there. At the summit, or I'm sorry, at FinOpsX, I'm going to go further into our RI and savings plan journey, expand that to CUDs, along with what we're talking about at GCP and Azure as well too. So please come to the summit or the FinOpsX, and I'd love to have more presentation with y'all.
That's great. And Josh, lots of questions were coming in the chat, and if you can stick around for the breakouts at the end, would love to bring those back and answer those. I love this idea. I mean, it gets to the core FinOps principles, right? It's like decentralize usage optimization and centralized rate optimization. So people who own the infrastructure can focus on using it better, and you can focus on getting better rates. And really cool to see that working at scale there. So well done.
Thanks.
All right. And let's get to our next speaker, Michelle from EBSCO. Hey, Michelle, are you there?
I am here. Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome. Over to you.
We need Joe unmuted.
Oh,
I know
okay.
that's painful, but we.
Oh, see, I have a permanent mute on Joe. That's probably what's happening now. Let's see here. Joe, are you able to unmute?
I am. Oddly, I'm
Perfect.
able to unmute well. So thank you, JR. So I'm here to talk with Michelle. She recently just had a job change. So she's now the Cloud Financial Operations Lead at EBSCO, as well as one of our ambassadors to the program at our FinOps program. So welcome, Michelle. So first question, we'll move into the next slide, JR. is how did this job change come about, Michelle?
I received a message from a recruiter on LinkedIn. It turns out that he saw that I had put my badge up like we'd been instructed to do and that I was certified as a practitioner. He had a client who was looking for a FinOps role, and he was very familiar with placing DevOps engineers, but he knew very little about the role of a FinOps engineer. And it turned out he was actually an alumni at Roger Williams. And as I have my niece going to school, she's in her first year of law school, what I had learned was they often depend on alumni for networking, and it's critical. So a courtesy call back to him, just even to make the connection for the Roger Williams piece of life. And also because I knew I could educate him on the FinOps Foundation and what we do and the great job board we have, because he was having difficult finding a place to recruit someone. And then after talking with him, he asked me if I would do him a favor and have the call with the hiring manager so I could give him a little bit of background about the FinOps world as well. So I did the call with the hiring manager, and it was really great. We hit it off. He was known as Mr. Spreadsheet. And we started talking, so that just hit home to me. So we started talking about what he was looking to do with the role, how he wanted to do more automation. And, we talked a little bit about the foundation and, how I was utilizing the tools. Long and short, he asked me if I would do an interview for the role. And I said I would. Here comes the great part, Joe. It's a 4-hour interview.
4 hours, that's
like,
exhausting.
What did I agree to? Can you put up the next slide, please?
So tell us about what 4 hours of talking FinOps interviews. What was that like?
So it consisted of a panel interview. And then from there, we had individual breakout sessions. And this is when all of a sudden the FinOps personas really became real to me, because I was doing some initial research in the people that I was going to be interviewing with, trying to figure out who they were and what their roles were. And that's when I started realizing, okay, this is an executive, this is someone in the finance area. And that helped me prepare for the questions that they were going to be interested in and their areas of focus. I actually flubbed the panel interview. It was difficult to feel comfortable and field the questions, but I excelled in the individual breakout sessions because I was able to focus on those areas that I'd spent time with, learning the domains, capabilities, and the personas, because I was very familiar with that. And so the focus is when, your cloud business office wants to talk to you about governance and tagging defects, whereas your finance people want to know how you're going to get people to stay, within their budgets. And so it was really great because that really helped me prepare for the interview.
I think that's fantastic, because I know I've been in interviews before where I'm like, well, I flubbed this, it's all downhill, but you felt that and you stuck with it. What struck you? So what was important to you as you were considering this job and role?
Can you bring up the next slide, JR? So beyond salary and benefits, if I was going to make a change, I really wanted to think about what was I looking for. And I was looking for culture. That was one big part of, that I had worked for in corporate America for many years, and I wanted something a little different. And when I saw these success factors that EBSCO had, it really spoke to me about their culture. The other thing that I came across when I was interviewing was the product manager had left the company years ago, and he came back and he said it was like coming home to family, and he was very, very happy to be there, but he wasn't an anomaly. There were other people who had done it too. And I had never seen that, because unfortunately, usually when people move on, they just never go back. They move somewhere else and forward on their journey. And that was fascinating to me. And I ended up, speaking with him again about it before I accepted the role. And so that really made a difference. The other thing about EBSCO that I really found interesting, they focus on research database, and they're working on becoming a cloud first company. So I thought that was a great opportunity. And their areas of focus are university, libraries, and now they've broken into medical research, and that's growing, and they're saving lives with the work they're doing. And that's really a nice, good feeling to work for a company that's making a difference in people's lives. So that was another piece for me that was important. Next slide. Oh, you're already there. Thank you.
So
Go ahead.
You get reached out to by a recruiter, you have a connection with them, and you respond to them, and he saw the FinOps Foundation badge. You initiate a conversation, leads to an interview process that you prepared really well for, and you learn you like the company. How was it actually moving jobs? How was it leaving your former role?
So that was really hard, because now all of a sudden I'm thinking about walking away from 12 years of building great relationships and having gone, through developing a FinOps practice, having a good team, doing migrations and everything. What's it gonna be like starting all over again? And the hardest part was saying goodbye to my SVP, who had invested so much in me and the opportunity to start in FinOps, and then also my mentor. And my mentor took me out to dinner as soon as I, told her I was leaving the company, I was going to be taking this role. And she just celebrated my successes. And none of that would have ever been possible without her investment in me over the years. And even now, she still champions for me. And my SVP, he couldn't have been happier for me, because they are so invested in your success. So when you are successful from that, they're happy for you. And that shows the true power of mentorship. And I'm actually excited to become a mentor and get involved at FinOps, as part of being an ambassador and build that out here.
It's so needed. So many people are looking for mentorship. So I'm really glad to hear that. Are you able to stay around for the breakouts at the end and get deeper questions? Okay, awesome. Yeah, we'd love to hear more of the story. Thank you, Michelle and Joe, for the fireside chat. I think the last bit we have is the working group updates before the breakouts. Now, all the work the FinOps Foundation does fits into this model of building out a framework to help people with best practices, and these working groups are the ones that drive that, and then that goes to that technical advisory council for vetting after. So I wanted to hear from Anderson from Farfetch about the Adopting FinOps Pitfalls group that I think just went live on the website. Is that right, Anderson?
Yes, that's right. Thanks for the opportunity. Glad to be here to talk about this working group. We've been working together since March this year. And our main objective was to produce 2 deliverables. One is an article about the pitfalls for those that are adopting FinOps, and the other is about KPIs that I will talk in a moment. But now I'm glad to announce that on the FinOps.org, you can find our article there, the Adopting FinOps Pitfalls. It's an article that was written using the brain and the knowledge of the people that were working with us. I think that the article is really great. Now it's there for you to go and read and provide your comments. It's an open source, so provide your comments in there in order to make this even better for those that are looking for it. Now we are heading to the second deliverable, which is to talk about the deliverables, to talk about the KPIs. So imagine you're starting your FinOps journey. So what comes next? So how do you measure your success? And not only how do you measure, what are the aspects that you need to take into consideration when collecting this data in order to produce repeatable KPIs throughout the time? And that's our challenge now. We have already started, but we are really on the beginning, looking forward for that. Here on the screen, you can see a little screenshots of the article. So things that we have there is the topic, description, do's and don'ts, and real world story that illustrates everything that we put in there. So you will know that's gonna be a good read. Looking forward for your feedback over there.
Anderson, how can they get involved? I know there's a Slack channel. Are you also doing regular meetings, or how's the group working together?
Yes, we have a Slack channel. If you want to join, you can find the Adopting FinOps. You can put a note in there, and then we can put you on the specific working group channel that we have. So it's time for us to work on the KPIs. So if you have any experience on KPIs, especially on the people that are beginning, you're more than welcome to join and share your knowledge.
Such a hot topic, KPIs. Yeah, I'm really excited to see the output of that. Thank you so much, Anderson, and the group for all the work there. Next up, we have Allison from Lloyd's. Allison.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, can you hear me?
Sounds good.
I hope so. I'm going to go ahead. Thank you, Rob. I got a thumbs up there. So Ashley also asked me to sort of do a little bit more about being involved. So my involvement in this working group was my first direct involvement in any of the foundation work. I mean, I always came along to summits and I would dip in and out of Slack, but that was it. So I kept myself on, I guess, on the periphery, but then I always felt like I was on the periphery. And then I saw that there was the forecasting working group. I've been doing a really big piece in my job about getting a repeatable forecasting process up and running, and it felt like for a while I was reinventing it every month, so it wasn't very repeatable. So it mattered to me, and I felt like I could contribute something, but I have to be completely honest, I also thought that I could probably get something out. I hoped I could get something out of it, quid pro quo. So what I will say to anybody out there who was like me and probably stayed on the edges is that I found it really positive. I found it really good. I feel, the foundation is by us for us, and I kept myself on the periphery. This has pushed me into it, and I would encourage anybody to get involved and to enjoy it. It makes you get to know really great people. I've been really lucky already. It's only a short piece of time. So that's my big shout out. Don't be shy. They're actually really, really nice. So what am I here to talk about today is the forecasting working group. We have a Slack channel. It's there. Please come join us. There was a special interest group. I don't know the timing, but there was a special interest group that kicked off sort of at least last year, probably beginning of last year. And they created how to be more accurate in forecasting. There's a paper on FinOps page on the website. It's great. Go have a read if you've got any interest. There's a lot of good information in there. We're not starting from scratch. We're looking to grow on that. We're wanting to create collateral that is of use to you, whether you're a beginner, well, a walker, a crawler, or a runner. But in order to do that, the reason I'm here to talk to you today is we've got a bit of a plea. Our very first sprint, we've created a survey. We've kept it really short, really quick. So there's no excuse for everybody not to go and complete it for us. We need to gather data. We need to know what you want. We need to learn from those of you that have got learnings to share. We need to know how to shape our next sprints, so the collateral that we deliver is of great use to you. Last year's State of FinOps, the one that closed at the end of the year and has been talked about so far this year, had forecasting as the 4th priority out of 14 priorities. So we know it's important, but forecasting is kind of huge, right? Is it about accuracy? Is it about spread of it? Is it about regularity? How does it drive? What does it impact? All of those things. So please come and give us your insight. It really doesn't matter whether you're at the start of your journey or whether you believe you've got it nailed. And most especially of all, if you've got some lessons that you've learned, or if you've got some don't do this, or absolutely this is where we started and we had to take that step even though we ditched it. So the last question on the survey gives you the opportunity, if you could give us your time, to speak to you individually and delve into it deeper. That's what we've done in order to keep the survey short. So either put your contact details in that last question, reach out to me directly on Slack, or come to the working group, forecasting working group Slack channel, and have a chat there. We'd love to hear from you. Please get involved if you've got any interest at all. We would love to join you to the working group. I'm hoping there'll be loads of information coming out.
It's such a challenging area because it's that intersection between finance and engineering, and everybody need to come together. And yeah, hard problem. Also really cool to see that forecasting work the group did last year. I think Tracy Rosler from Scout led the initial group getting iterated on. I think that's what we're looking to see in this community, right? Put out contents, it continues to evolve, we make it better and plug in. So thank you, Allison, for the work there and for the update. I think we're also going to do a quick overview before the breakouts on the other working groups. Vaz, are you covering these?
Yeah, I can take those, or if Ashley, feel free to jump in if you have any additional color. But the next few slides are just our working groups that are in flight or are working on their proposals. The first couple of slides here, JR, we're looking at ITFM, TBM are made good progress. They're in the middle of their sprint. Adopting FinOps, you just heard about the great work that they're doing there. and advancing FinOps careers as well. They're in work in progress. Do you mind going to the next slide? Sustainability, Mark Butcher's leading the charge here, and that group is got a proposal together and actively working. And the U.S. government has actually, the U.S. government working group has already published a deliverable from their first sprint and have actively started in their second sprint. So if you go to FinOps.org, you can see their playbook for government and reach out to Melvin if you'd like to join and be part of that second sprint. And I think the next couple of slides are just working groups that are looking to get their proposals firmed up. And then they'll kick off their sprints. And the last one is for folks that are looking still for support. So FinOps for AI ML, that working group is definitely looking for folks that are interested in exploring a potential sprint and automation. I think Ashley has posted a few links in the Zoom chat as well as in Slack. This working group is just getting going. So Ashley, do you have any updates for that one as well? Or do you want to echo the posts that you've already made in the chat?
Automation group, they've got a proposal ready to submit, so they'll be starting their like 10-week sprints. It's a really good time to get on at the beginning. And what they're looking to do is try to figure out what are all the different things that people are automating, whether it's a SaaS tooling or individual company, and starting to get those playbooks out to the community. So it's going to be really interesting. So if any interest,
awesome.
please join.
Thanks, Ashley. And Steve just posted in the Zoom chat a link to our project overview page, which is a nice dovetail into this slide. If you have an idea for a working group, if you go to the project's overview page, you'll find a link there. It's a very short form, and we'll reach out to you to get additional info, but feel free to come in there. There's also an FAQ, so you can learn about what working groups are, how they work, what special interest groups are, how they work. And of course, you can always reach out to us in Slack with questions.
Fantastic. Yeah, this is the next step of getting involved, joining a work group and sharing your knowledge. Not only do you help the community, but you also make some really good connections. And we don't just need experts in them. Like every stage of the journey is really important to represent in these working groups. In fact, we're trying to go earlier stage a lot because some of the challenges of these are different at earlier stages versus late. We've talked a lot about events. Check out FinOps.org/events for everything upcoming. I'm not going to say it again, but I'll say it again. Register for FinOpsX. It's going to be kind of amazing. We're spending a lot of time on it, and I think it's going to be a really cool conference. Definitely check out the FinOps Pod that we've talked about. A lot of these folks are in there. We'd love to interview more of you. If you want to be interviewed, reach out to the team there. And let's get into the breakouts. JR here from the FinOps Foundation. Thank you for watching. Please go to FinOps.org if you want to get plugged into this amazing community. And of course, hit subscribe right here on YouTube to get all the future content. Hope to see you soon.